The only way that we hold on is if the folks watching this show go to tedcruz.org right now, go online to tedcruz.org, make a contribution of $5, $10, $25, $50, $100, because my race, my support is not from the big money special interests in Washington, D.C. It is from constitutional conservatives across the country who go to tedcruz.org and who help give me the resources to withstand $100 million from these left-wing Democrats and Marxists who are trying to invade this country and destroy this country.
Republican Senator and podcaster Ted Cruz is currently running a fraught re-election campaign, but money is tight, or so we thought. Turns out Ted's Truth and Courage PAC just reported receiving nearly $250,000 from iHeartMedia.
But now, with iHeart stepping in to distribute and promote, the reach is going to be that much broader. And I think that's really exciting, because this was always about really equipping our listeners. If you're going to battle to save the country, if you're going to take on the cultural Marxist, if you're going to take on the socialist and the people coming at everything that built America, you need the tools, you need the information, you need to know what's going on. And the vision of this podcast was always, we're going to give you as much of those tools as possible so that you're prepared and you know the inside story.
iHeartMedia hosts Ted's podcast, which means that they do the marketing and promotion for it too. iHeartMedia also happens to be a registered lobbyist. The FEC filing reveals that Ted's senatorial campaign received $215,000 from iHeartMedia Management Services last month. The Truth and Courage PAC, by the way, has nothing to do with podcasting. It was specifically created to support Ted's current political campaign. But here's the thing. If iHeartMedia is a registered federal lobbyist, it's not supposed to be donating to senators, and senators are not supposed to be accepting gifts from registered lobbyists. A complaint was filed in 2022 with the Senate Ethics Committee over the partnership between iHeartMedia and Ted Cruz, but the complaint was ultimately dismissed on the grounds that, quote, Senator Cruz receives no financial benefit for Verdict. Verdict is the name of his podcast, by the way. They compared the podcast being hosted on the platform as being no different from Cruz making an appearance on network or cable television. But even though Cruz is allegedly not getting paid directly for doing the podcast or by iHeartMedia, iHeart is funding and marketing the whole thing. Additionally, ads from the podcast are generating revenue. As of about a month ago, Ted was filming video for his podcast in the iHeart studio, and he was dropping episodes 3 times a week. I didn't realize until covering this story right now that he was podcasting so often. And I just checked his audio episodes on Spotify, and he's dropping hour-long episodes nearly every day or every other day.
People might think this is weird or petty, but I'm going to talk. I think it's weird for a U.S. Senator to do 5 podcast episodes a week. Yeah. I'm not wrong,
That's right. No, that's right. I mean, it's very time consuming. Like when I appear on a podcast, it takes time. But being the host, and he normally does 3 a week. So that was actually news for me that he was up to 5. He's a media personality. He's not serious about being a senator.
I feel like there's some level at which maybe you'll help. If you beat him, you help him. Because I think he really just wants to do that full time, which again, no shade.
Hey,
you know what I mean?
Right,
but I mean, you might be giving him a hand.
Yeah, that's what he wants to do. He's not a serious legislator.
Look, people think podcasters just talking to a mic for an hour, and yes, maybe some of them do. But there is a lot of work that goes into producing a single podcast episode, even for the host, even if there's a whole team of people working behind the scenes. That is an awful lot of time and an awful lot of work for someone to put into a podcast, especially when that person is supposed to be a U.S. Senator. My senator. Anyway, even if all of that is above board somehow, why did iHeartMedia put so much money into the senator's political action committee that was set up for the express purpose of funding his re-election campaign?
This episode of Verdict with Ted Cruz is being brought to you by Jobs, Freedom, and Security PAC.
iHeartMedia has reportedly spent $50 million on lobbying efforts since 2003 in the hopes of influencing legislation around data privacy, radio ownership, and the Communications Decency Act. And in 2022, at the time that iHeartMedia picked up Cruz's podcast and partnered with the senator, iHeart had spent over $3.5 million in lobbying. 2 of the bills they lobbied for went before the Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation, and Ted Cruz happens to be the highest-ranking Republican on that committee. So it is March of an election year, nearly April, and as I'm sure a lot of you know, I live in Texas, but not just in Texas, but I live in Houston, which is also where Ted Cruz lives. So I had been bracing myself for an insufferable election year relative to Ted Cruz, but so far it's been pretty chill. At least Ted's campaigning hasn't yet reached my non-Republican sphere of influence, and that's reasonable. I have never voted Republican in my life, so it wouldn't make sense for them to invest any money or time into a voter like me. But there had been reports that his campaign wasn't raising as much money as he maybe would have liked it to. Mitch McConnell wasn't really helping him out much either because allegedly he thinks Ted Cruz's campaign is a lost cause. The reason for this is that Ted Cruz, however unlikely it may seem to some, is not expected to keep his seat in November. He kept his seat by just a hair when he ran against Beto O'Rourke in 2018, and I'll remind you, Beto was running as a progressive Democrat. He won by a 2.6% margin, making it the closest Texas Senate race in 40 years. Since then, his popularity has only dwindled. This time, he's up against Colin Allred, and let me tell you, Colin Allred is hustling. I am squarely in his sphere of influence, so I have already been getting ads from this guy on social media for months. He emails me almost daily, and he probably texts me more than any other single person in my life texts me. So maybe the writing's on the wall. Maybe Ted Cruz knows that his future as an elected political figure is not bright, so he's working on his backup plan. He'll have to work a bit harder though. He's currently ranked at 31 on Apple and number 43 on Spotify in the news podcast charts. That said, he still brought in a hefty bit of money through those ad sales, more than his senatorial salary. And now I'm remembering that he still gets paid a 6-figure salary with tax dollars to be a senator while he is just being a podcaster instead.
Well, I'm having a blast.
All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video, subscribe to my channel, and listen to my podcast, Modern Context, because it's better than Ted Cruz's and I'm not a senator. Thanks.